January marks the 40th anniversary of the Supreme Court decision that declared abortion a private right, and also really launched the modern pro-life movement. And so it's a good time for us to assess what's happened in the last generation and talk about the next generation. I'm here with a friend of many, many years, John Piper. Thank you for giving us your time.
Pleasure.
We go back to when I was a student in college, and John was a professor and taught me Greek New Testament.
Did your wedding?
Did my wedding, that's right, and I'm still married 34 years later. And as far as I know, she's still with me. So that's good. I'm also with a great friend and co-worker in the Stand for Life, Scott Klusendorf, who is, I think, our nation's premier spokesman for advocating and articulating the cause of life in a secular and hostile culture, and helping us do that with winsomeness and confidence. And we're here to ask you a few questions about the cause of life at this juncture between one generation and the next. So let's start off real broad. And abortion in the Christian, abortion in the church, after 40 years, how do you assess where we're at?
I feel like you guys should be answering these questions because you're the experts, and I just try to say something from the Bible every now and then about this because it's a horrible thing. And it's no less horrible after 40 years than it was before. To cut babies in pieces in the womb and call it by another name is a horrific thing. It seems to me like with every issue, things get worse and things get better. I mean, that's just my understanding of the world. Eschatology is going to get dark, it's going to get light, and there are bright spots and there are dark spots. The dark spot seems to me that we are in a era where we have the most radically extreme pro-choice president we've ever had, who says things that simply are appalling, it seems to me, for any parent to hear, that he wants equal rights for his girls, which I don't know, what does that mean when you're talking about abortion? It means, okay, if a boy can have sex and get away with it, my girl should have sex and be able to get away with it? I mean, what else? I don't know what that means. To have equal rights. Equal with whom? Equal with the boys. Well, they can just have sex and go off and no problem. Girls should have no problems as well. The way they have no problems is no baby.
Right.
You take a deep breath and you say, really, you want to say that? You want to say that about anybody, let alone your own girls? So that's a piece, and that's a mark of sexual bondage in our culture. I mean, the news right now is big shots in the media having sex and getting pregnant. She's pregnant, isn't that cool? And they're not married, and we celebrate this and wonder what the new paradigm will look like for pregnancy. So that's worse, it seems to me. The sexual bondage that we're in as a culture is worse. We have, professors advocating infanticide? That wasn't true 40 years ago.
Dr. Singer?
Yeah, Dr. Singer just say, look, they're not fully human after they're born either. And so that's consistent.
It's an intellectually consistent argument.
It is. So that's worse, it seems to me. And we have, at the other end, assisted suicide laws. They didn't exist 40 years ago. So I'd say things are worse in...
Which Schaefer predicted would happen.
Yep.
Others. Yeah.
What's better, it seems to me, and I'll just give one little glimpse from my particular angle. Back in the 80s, when I was trying to be as aggressively public on this as possible and be very activist and proactive, it was common for the critics of the pro-life movement to get in our face and say, look, you white guys who have this Republican view don't care about women after the baby. You don't care about babies after they're born. You don't care about anything except your issue.
Right.
I don't hear that much anymore, and the reason is because God has developed such diverse and extensive care ministries. The Crisis Pregnancy Center movement is largely a Christian movement, and there's so many thousands of these now that their care is so intense and focused for mom and for baby, before, after,
and fathers too,
and dads too. So that the care and the love that has spread over the cause, I think, has silenced the mouth of many of that kind of critic. So that seems beautiful to me, that in any place in America now, just about, there's a place to turn for help, and they'll really help you. They'll help you in every way. So that's one bright spot, at least.
And it took 40 years to get us that network of care in place. The pro-life cause has just hundreds of thousands of young people flooding into it these days. And many of them taking up leadership positions in the broader pro-life effort. They talk about this not being their grandfather's pro-life movement anymore. So there's a lot of changes going on. And it raises the question, what would you encourage the next generation of leadership to extend or to correct or improve in talking about the larger reputation or weaknesses, whether real or perceived, that need to be corrected going forward as a Christian effort?
The first one that comes to my mind, which may not be the most important one, is that in the most intense battles that I have fought, I have watched anger trump a willingness to suffer. Now, I think there's an appropriate place for anger in this. I mean, not to get angry at somebody who's killing a child is defective. However, if your dominant personal and public persona is in your face bitterness rather than a willingness to be a lowly, sacrificial sufferer over the long haul, something's askew. So that I would say to the young people, be willing to suffer. Be willing to pay a price. Be willing to sacrifice. The second thing that comes to my mind is a lot of people just got tired. I think William Bennett called it a culture of acedia, A-C-E-D-I-A, which means boredom, weariness with the cause. And I used to talk in terms of, still do when I have a chance, to talk in terms of, let's not let this newer generation be a culture of adrenaline Christians, but coronary Christians. And what I mean by that is, adrenaline comes in for just a short spurt for a moment's crisis. And when it's done, you're just... A coronary Christian is William Wilberforce, right? The heart beats all night. It beats all day. Isn't it amazing that the heart just keeps on beating? We need Christians who just keep on beating. They don't just spurt, little thing, on the campus we had a little movement.
Kind of get it off the to-do list almost.
Yeah, and so we need a generation of coronary Christians who are like the lub-dub of their own hearts on gospel issues, and this is one of them. So that's another thing I would say to them. A third thing I would say is go for roots. Don't just work up here at the level of killing is wrong. Go down, why are people doing this? Why is the sex situation the way it is, so that there are many crisis pregnancies that there are? And why are churches silent? And why are politicians cowardly? And go down deep under the things that are feeding this thing and be a deeply biblical, God-centered generation, so that over the long haul you're constantly attacking the roots as well as the fruits of this thing up here. I personally think abortion should be illegal. But if you pour all your energies into the legal dimension and the argumentation of why certain things are criminalized and other things are not criminalized, then you might miss some of the deeper issues of how did we get here? Yeah. So there's so many of these. And of course, we should, you know this better than I do, especially you, that this is a global thing. It's not just an American thing. And the situation right now, say in Russia, I read 70% or so of their pregnancies end in abortion, so that they are killing themselves as a culture.
Well, they're actually, they have 15 million fewer people living in Russia today than 20 years ago. So Putin, who is a strong leader, is actually trying to get abortion stopped in Russia, not for any moral reasons, but for an economic base. They see they're committing suicide, which is true. Yeah. And of course, China.
Maybe that would be one last thing to say with regard to the generation is, be a child-loving, family-loving generation, because there is so much anti-child. They are just problems, right? They are in the way of my lifestyle. I'm going to farm them out to here and there. And as long as that mindset reigns, that children aren't precious, children aren't a blessing for the nation long term, for families, for getting old, for the whole dynamic of what it means to be human, as long as that mindset holds sway, abortion is going to be understandable. But if our generation would be, we love children, we love having them, we love caring for them, we love adopting them, that atmosphere, that culture will be anti-abortion.
I liked what you said, John, a moment ago about a generation willing to suffer, and Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous quote comes to mind, where he said, "We will exceed your ability to inflict suffering with our ability to endure it." And I think that's exactly the type of pro-life Christian we want to raise up. And you mentioned something important, too, about getting to the roots. And if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a question about why is it, as you mentioned a moment ago, why is it that some pastors who are gospel-centered, they have a mission to see the name of Jesus proclaimed globally, they want to see lives transformed, and God bless them for the work they're doing there. But yet when it comes to this issue of abortion, they view it either as a distraction where this is going to move me off of my gospel focus, or they view it as a secondary issue that really doesn't deserve the focus that some pro-life Christians would put on it. What would you say to that pastor?
Yeah. I was asking him a few questions first to try to get at the roots of his own indifference, because they're different kinds of roots, some more understandable than others. I would attack first the issue of, is there cowardice here? Are you afraid of the people in your own church? Not just what will be said outside, that there are people in your own church and you suspect they really are pro-choice. And if you start saying anything, they will create a problem for you. But that's not the most significant thing to say to a pastor, I don't think. I think the most significant thing to say is, look, sort through this issue of so-called social issues and gospel issues down to the root and figure out a way to preach at the moral dimensions and the spiritual dimensions and the gospel dimensions of all the so-called social issues. I wouldn't, frankly, encourage a pastor to be a political or social mobilizer of issue movements. I think that will be distracting and will undercut the very power that can sever the root of abortion. The power that will sever the root of abortion is going to the root of the gospel as a message that rescues people from sin. One of the worst sins is killing other human beings. Therefore, have you thought through, Pastor, that you aren't mainly out to save babies, you're out to save abortionists and moms who are killing, and murderers won't enter into the kingdom of heaven. And so the gospel is about rescuing people from hell and from destruction. And your indifference to killing is like saying, oh, it doesn't really matter whether people are killing their children, because I don't have anything to say that. It's a gospel issue. No, it's not. It's not. I mean, it's a socialist. It is a gospel issue because the gospel is designed to rescue people from doing the things that send them to hell, and killing sends people to hell. So I talk in those terms. I think from the way I've done it, I'd say to them, look, probably when you think about getting into this issue, you think about going to the Capitol, standing on the steps, waving a banner, and that feels like distraction. I'm saying, look, on Saturday, pour yourself into the Bible and say something to your people just at the root level and tell them it's wrong. You don't have to have all the answers about what the legal dimensions are, what the criminalization dimensions are, what the borderline ambiguities are. I've preached for, 20 years, every Sanctity of Life Sunday on this, and every time I've said, now what can I say this time that will get to the biblical roots of this? So I would just plead with those pastors to go at this at the gospel root level. There are ways to do that. Don't fret about being typed. That's one last thing maybe I should say, because I know a lot of younger pastors desperately don't want to be seen as right-wing, moral majority, if anybody remembers that term. They don't want to go there, and I don't blame them. They don't want to be stereotyped. But as soon as you talk about abortion, you're a Republican, right? I mean, this has become so unbelievably partisan that it's in the platforms of the Democratic Party to have a wrong view on this, I think. And so as soon as you take a view, it sounds like you've taken a political view. But they can address that. They can say clearly. And the way I've done it is to say, okay, we're going to talk about racial issues on Martin Luther King weekend, and the next weekend we're talking about sanctity of life. This is a Democratic issue, and this is a Republican issue. We're neither. We're Bible people, and if it looks like we're Democrats one week and Republicans the next week, so be it. We're not. We're Bible people. We're Christ people, and God hates racial injustice, and He hates the killing of the unborn. I think you can help pastors feel that there's a way to do this that's not partisan.
If the pro-life movement did a better job positioning the abortion issue within the larger struggle for human equality, would that be a plus for these pastors?
It would. I mean, but I almost don't want to argue that way. It's so true. It's so right. I mean, why, for example, is opposition to human trafficking right now everywhere and loved?
Yeah.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
It's because nobody's going to criticize you for it.
That's right.
Nobody's going to criticize you for it. No Democrats are going to say that's taking away the rights of a woman, or the rights of the pimp, or whatever. They're not going to say it. You have nobody on your case. With abortion, Satan has done his murdering, deceiving work in this nation and around the world, but particularly, I think, in this nation, to make this look like you're some kind of right-wing fanatic with lots of cool people opposed to you on this. And therefore, the courage to stand for that life issue is greater than the courage to be involved with more popular social issues today.
Yeah, that's why I call it cross-bearing for the childbearing, because it just reminds everybody that this is an issue that when you take a stand, you're not going to get a pat on the back for it. You know, you have to get your satisfaction from a different place than the world, and you become the target of the world's animosity.
Or I've watched this. You will get a pat on the back from the wrong people, meaning perceived wrong people. I mean, I have people I know I don't want on my side on this. You know what I mean? I mean, they are weird people. They're people who don't say it right, and they pray the wrong way. And as soon as there are enough of those strange people around you blessing you, You can't be like, no, I don't want that kind of friend. I want everybody on board here. So it's the courage not only to be criticized, but the courage to be befriended by people who will make you look weird.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a really sensitive issue. This goes back to the article you wrote so many years ago. Remember?
Well, tell me what it is.
Missions and masturbation.
Oh, yes, I remember. Almost got me fired.
I remember that.
I had a woman stop at the door at the end of that, took me by the hand, she looked in my eyes, she said, "You're sick." You know what she said? She's one of my parishioners. "You're sick."
Well, it was an article that you wrote, I think, to directly strike a blow at the guilt that was disabling people from moving forward with their life.
That's what it was, yeah.
In the greater cause of missions and Christian service. And I've never forgotten the title. I got the main point. I couldn't remember what you said. But today, what would an article or missions and abortion say? Because we're 35 years past that article, and the sexual upheaval and the abortion becoming routine, and everybody's acclimated to it, leaving half the people, even at this conference, probably having a direct struggle with their sexual sin and abortion. What would you say to them today?
Yeah. Not unlike what I said before, two things come to mind. One, the reason the gospel exists is not just to prevent abortion, but to save abortionists who've killed babies, moms who've fallen for the lie that this would be a better way forward, husbands or boyfriends who have encouraged the taking of the life. The gospel is about rescue from guilt. It's about rescue from the punishment of sin, and not just the prevention of sin. So there is hope. We have the one message in all the world that has the power to stop it at the front end and forgive it at the back end because of what Jesus has done. And so I would say, first, this blot on your life is real, it's deep, it's ugly, and so are 1,000 other blots, and Jesus came into the world to save sinners. Paul said, "Of whom I am chief," and he meant I had killed Christians. That's what it says in Acts 9. He was breathing out murders and threats against Christians. So he had this blot on his life. It always made him feel like, I'm the worst of sinners, and it made him soar with gratitude for the grace of God, and it empowered him in the cause of saving lives. And so I would say, this is the second thing. God is able to take the worst of situations and use them for good. The story of Joseph, he gets sold into slavery, and he's 13 years heading down, and suddenly he's the vice president of Egypt, and you say, oh, now I understand my horrible life. And I just would love to see women and men who have succumbed to the sin of abortion find cleansing and forgiveness, and then out of that say, okay, God, is there a providential reason why you let Paul go through Christian killing on the way to apostleship and me go through abortion committing on the way to what? Some kind of apostleship for life. Now, it's, yeah, God is sovereign. That's what he does. He takes broken-hearted, sinful people who've done the worst of things and says, I've got a plan for you. It's like Peter, just before Jesus said, you're going to deny me 3 times, which is about as bad as it gets at the moment when he's being killed for Peter. You're going to deny me 3 times. And then he said, I've prayed for you. When you turn, strengthen your brothers. Like, you're already planning the use of this denial at the front end. That's our sovereign God. So I have prayed for you, and I will take your killing your baby or 4 babies, and I will make you an advocate that will be the most powerful, beautiful remainder of your life you could have ever dreamed.
Which is what I think the pro-life movement at its best has produced, an army of men and women who have testified to their regret over abortion and their commitment to move it forward, the cause of life. Our time has run out, so I think we'll end there. But John, thank you for being an advocate for life. And,
well, thank you, John and Scott, because what you both do is very significant. I'm thankful.
Well, we are not through yet, and we'll
Amen.
continue to press on and gather strength as we go from others and bring it to the next generation. Let them take it forward. So thank you again. Thanks, Scott.